Hello everyone, welcome back for the next session of SAP Security. In this session we will be discussing about creating and maintaining SAP user master data. First of all, a user can only log into SAP system by using an user ID as well as a password. If does not exist an user ID and password, then the user cannot log into the system. As we seen, the scope of SAP user, that means what the user can do with the SAP, that is defined by the roles which is assigned to the user. And the user master record is a client specific record that we have already seen. That means if you want to log into SAP system, you need a user ID in the specific client which you wanted to access. So this is a client specific data. To create SAP user master, the transaction code is SU01. So in order to execute this transaction code SU01, there is quite number of authorization objects which is required. So how do we know what is the authorization object which is required to run SU01? So for that we have an transaction code called SU24. We will see in very detail how does the SU24 works. But in general, we wanted to know what is the authorization object. Let's check in our system using SU24 what are all the authorization object which is required. Let's go to our system. Okay, here is our system. If you run SU24, in this screen application, here you put SU01. In this screen you come back and see what all the proposal says yes. This means this is required. So when we here, these are all the main object which is required. The first one is authorization check for roles. That means if you have this authorization, then we can assign the specific authorization to this user. Second one, for example, user master maintenance authorizations. That means this object controls what you can assign, what kind of authorization you can assign in user master using SU01. The next object is, for example, s underscore user underscore GPR GRP. That means user master maintenance user groups. Means using this authorization objects you can control some specific user groups. Let's say I don't know what this authorization object does. So what I will do, I will just simply select this and go to information. Here it will give you the detail of this authorization object. What this authorization object does, this authorization object which is checked during authorization maintenance. Whenever you are using, and this also been used in some another transaction code, if you see SU03 and SU02, define this field. It will allow you to maintain, delete and of authorizations which are assigned to the users, and it has something called authorization name. Within this authorization object, this field, the authorization administrator can give a limited namespace for assignment of authorization names. That means this particular object allow you to assign or delete roles from the user. Also you can limit some of the roles. That means, for example, if in a practical scenario what happens is you have a decentralized user administration, for example. In that case, so you are a security consultant, you administrate the entire system, then you have small groups For example, they supposed to do some specific user group or some specific job roles. So then in a practical scenario, you will have a job role which is defined for end users. You will have some job roles which is defined for your consultants, for example, yeah, consultant or some data migration, some sensitive roles. So you don't want these sensitive roles to be assigned to the end user by these small group of people. That should be done by somebody who is in a higher level in security. In that case, you can use this authorization object and restrict what are all the job roles or what are all the roles which can be assigned by these users, these administrators. So what we are trying to do here is in SU01 we are trying to implement an authorization concept. Then inside you have also the activity. Yeah. What they can do, they can create, change, display, delete, activate, display change document, assign authorization profiles and archive. So in this case, what do we need? We don't need to create because that is for creation of roles that comes on PFCG, and change also we don't need. We need display. Yeah, display, activate, maybe display change documents and assign authorization profile. So what we need is 0, 3, 0, 8 and 22. So if this authorization object with this activity 0, 3, 8 and 22 and whatever the role which you have defined here, if you assign some role names here, that means the person who has this authorization object will be able to assign only this job roles or single roles, whatever the technical roles which we define. So that is the concept behind that. And let's see the next one, s_user_grp. This has a user group field. Okay, I need to give you some more details. If you double click on the specific object, then you know what is inside this object. Now you have activity, authorization and the object. Let's double click on the next one. Then you have user group. In user group we have quite a number of activities. You have here you have activity as well as CLASS. CLASS means it's user group. It's a technical name for user group. Let's say we don't know what this means, so we simply select this and display. Then it gives you the detailed authorization objects checks during the user maintenance. This is the menu path. So this object define following field, user group. This field can use to set user administrator to maintain one or more user group. This makes sense if there is more than one user administrator. As I said, if you have something like decentralized user administration, then you can use these type of concepts. Let's say you have user group created for support users, then you have one user administrator. Then you have one company code, you want one user administrator need to take care of these users. Then you can assign only the user group for this user administrator. Then they will be able to administrate only the user group which is assigned to them. So we can decentralize the whole user administration process. Then the next one is activity. We have different activities: create, change, display, lock, delete, lock, unlock, delete. For example, here we are giving they are giving you even an example. Let's say user group is super, then activity 01 to 03 and 06. This authorization allows the user administrator to create and maintain, delete and display user in the super user group or user not assigned to user group. However, the administrator may not lock and unlock the users or display the changes or display change documents. So this, if you assign this authorization object with the user group super and activity 01 to 03 and 06, then the particular user can administrate the users from this group. That means they can do create, change, display and delete, but they don't have 5, so they cannot do lock, unlock. They also cannot check the change documents. Yeah, change documents also very important topic that we will come to that later. Okay, let's see the next object. Here we have activity and profile. Okay, in this authorization object we can define what profile they can assign. Before, what we have seen is the roles. Now we are talking about the profile. Okay, here then we have some more. This is again system specific assignment, and this is for central user maintenance. Okay, so these are all the optional, and these are all the main ones which we need. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. So create user using transaction code SU01. We also seen what are all the authorization objects related to SU01 which is required in order to create user or assign some job role to this user. Okay, when you go to SU01, you will see lot of information in SAP. The first one is address. In this tab, we call this as tabs. In this tab, we will define all the personal data and the communication data, email address and company address and so on. Next one is logon data. This logon data will have user type, validity, password and user groups and some more information like cost center, account number and stuff like this. And next one is SNC. This is secure communication in the network. SNC full form is secure network communication. Then you will have the certificate which we can define it here. Next tab is default. In this tab you can define the startup menu, logon language, date and time format and default printers, stuff like this. And next one is parameters. This here we can define the user parameters. Again, roles. Here we can assign the roles which needs to be assigned to respective users. When you assign the roles here, then the respective profiles will be populated into this tab, profiles. We can also assign profiles directly to the users, but it is recommended that we do not assign any profiles to the users. There is a reason for that. We will see that why we should not assign it later. But there is also some standard profiles, standard profiles which is given by SAP. Thus we can assign it here something, for example SAP all, SAP _ all. It's a profile which is delivered by SAP which has all the authorization objects available in this profile. So we can assign that profile here. So if you wanted to give all authorization to one user, then we can assign it here. Then this one is groups, but this groups is generally we do not use this group, but it's for special purpose. We see that later. Next one is personalization data. We can have a user specific personalized data. Then last one is license data, user license data. We will see the details of each tab one by one. First one is address. In this address tab, this is the last name is a mandatory field. Rest everything is not mandatory field. In a best case scenario, that you need to identify what are all the mandatory fields which is required for an user. It's always good to have all the information filled. The reason is that once you have you have implemented the SAP or went live, then after a period of time, then you will start analyzing how many users is live, how many users are being used. Each user have license, so you have to be very careful, because this is again we are spending quite a lot of money for each users. The initial stage itself, we identify each user and fill up all the details for this user. Then it's going to be very useful for you in the later stage to track this user. This is very, very important. So you define, while you are implementing SAP, you define a procedure saying that what are all the fields which is mandatory for user master data. Okay, this will help you in a later stage. Then we have here the personal data. Then we have communication data. In the communication data, we can have telephone numbers and mobile phone numbers, fax number, and email ID. So many companies, what we have seen, they will identify the people with email ID. Email ID will be a mandatory field, because that is the best way to track this user. Then if we have an email ID which is mandatory, then we can communicate to this user. At last, we have something called company. We can create companies for SAP user and assign to this company. That means assign this user to this specific company. This is quite useful in order to identify this user which company they belong to. For example, if let's say your SAP system, you have 10-15 companies, maybe in different countries. So you wanted to identify this user coming from which company, then you can use this field. Or maybe in the same country but you have different companies, then you can create a company code here. You can create a company address here and assign to this user. And please keep in mind, the company which we are creating user master is nothing to do with financial data. That means the functional consultant also will create companies. That is nothing to do with this company. This company is just used only in the user master. So please do not confuse this one. This is basically, people misunderstand this concept in company here. This company is nothing to do with your actual company code in your business transaction. This is again, it's not a mandatory field, but it is better to create the company code same like what you do in your business transaction, so that it is quite easy that these users comes from which company. And in some program or some customized program, people use this company address for kind of printing their name cards from SAP to automatically put it in print it in the some documents like this. You can use this company address. The reason why they don't use the actual company code which is created in the functional is because you can also use the personal information like mobile numbers and telephone numbers from here and the email ID. Let's say you wanted to print your name cards, and this the user can change using the transaction code SU3. They can change these informations. So it's quite easy to use this one in your customized programs. That is the one of the, let's say, one of the advantage of having a company address here. Let's see in our system first. So I will go to the transaction /NSU01. So we will create a user. Security student 1. This username can have 12 characters maximum, and put the username. Then we have something called alias. This one you can have a different username. Generally people use the email ID here. This is like a alias user ID which you can use in something like ESS, employee self-service portal. So you can, instead of this user ID, you can use this ID which is put in here. Okay, let's say create. You can see, if you see this kind of symbol, that means this is a mandatory field. And let's say I will create some Mr. SAP Security Student 01. This is my last name and this is my first name. Academic title you can select from here. Let's say I have MBA. Function student, department is training. A room number, if you wanted to fill up, you can fill it up. Telephone number, yes. Then the email ID, then security student at mydomain.com. Here also you can specify the communication method. How do you want the user needs to be communicated? Then you can, let's say, telephone or remote mail or email, whatever, we can specify it here. So if you specify it here, then some of the programs you can use this information to communicate to this specific user. That is the advantage of this. Then assign company code. If you click here, these are all the company codes which is presently available with this in this system. So let's say SAP France, then you are assigned to SAP France. Now let's see how do we create a company address here. Say assign a new company. Let's create a company here, SAP Security Training. Okay, this is our company. Unfortunately this is title, so let's say we are company but we are not Mr. Then the country, let's say select one country. We are from then let's select a country. Let's say United Arab Emirates. Okay, AE. And we can also set the time zone. I'm not sure what is the time zone for United Arab Emirates. Let's say Iran. Okay, it is a time zone. You can provide the address of this specific company, postal code 1020 something, PO box postal code 123321 123 what is the language they use, and telephone, that is info at mydomain.com. okay, standard communication method, remote email, remote mail. If you want to put some comment, yeah, this is training company. Only postal code or company code postal is allowed, so we should not have this. Okay, time zone is not a valid for this is not a time zone here. Okay, that is the warning message generally. So if we wanted to fix it, you can fix it. I said okay, then personal time zone no longer matched the time zone, the company code. You wanted to adjust the personal time zone. Yep. So we have created a new company code assigned to this user. So what did I do here? I was trying to save this user, but it says that we need to have an initial password. The reason is the initial password is a mandatory field. That's the reason it's not allowing me to save it. So for just to save, I will put one password here. Okay, let me come back here. So the address field, so we have seen what are all the address fields. The main important thing is here creating an additional company address, how to create a company address and how to assign this company address. So whenever now you want that this SAP security company is always available, then you can assign this company code. Yeah, SAP security training. Okay, now let's go to the next tab. As I said, this alias is an 40 character username. It's basically the user ID is, you have only 12 characters. Here you can put 40 characters. This is generally used only in employee self-service or some kind of internet transaction data. So if for example you wanted to have a user who will use SAP or and ESS, then you need to use this alias, and you need to define the user IDs here. Then they will be using this user ID as a alias user ID to log into our log into their ESS for their internet transactions. Next one is user type. Now our user type is dialog, because we will use this user type to log into the system. We will see this particular user type in detail. It's quite important. For time being, we just select dialog. We need to put an initial password. So you can key in the initial password, or you can generate a password using this wizard. If you click this wizard, then it will generate a password for you. it will automatically generate a password for you. That will be the best way to do it. You, instead of keying your own password, better to generate this password. And next one is the user group. As we seen, this user group has its own authorization check. So whatever the user group you have assigned here, you can check this user based on this authorization group. Let's say I put this technical. So now we have assigned the user group as super. So whoever has the authorization object which has the value of user group can only maintain this user. Then validity from. Then next tab is validity period. This is also quite important. We can define its valid from and valid through. So we can put the date, let's say, and valid through. So I define this user is valid for 1 year. In a typical scenario, people, what we have seen, what I have experienced so far, people leave this as blank. Please don't leave this blank, because if you want to control the users in a better way, then you need to have a validity period. So you need to have a policy saying that whenever you create a user, the default validity period for this user is 1 year or maybe 10 years, whatever. So you need to have some kind of policies to define this validity. What it does, that it will help you to review these users whenever this user is not valid. For example, we assign default validity for a user is 1 year. So every year that same user has to go back and ask their superiors to extend their user IDs. So what you will know that this user is a valid user or not. So if the user does not come back, that means the user is not using, maybe, and they don't need user ID. Maybe some user, they don't know there is an SAP user ID. So you can limit, you can control a lot of things by using this validity period. And this also sometime very useful valid from. So let's say you are in a support project. The project is going live maybe after 10 days. So you need to prepare the system. So after 10 days, when on the go live date, when you start creating the users, maybe you need to create thousands of users. You cannot do it in the same day. So what we generally do, we will create all the users. We will start creating users maybe 2 weeks before. We will create the user, keep the validity period of the date when it is going live. So from on that day only they can log into the system. So we can actually make use of this validity period in our security perspective as well. For process, this is very important that we need to define. It is always good to define a validity period for each users. Then account number and cost center. This is just a free text. You can put whatever the information you need. In general, what we will use this account number and cost center, this will be a real cost center, actual cost center in your business. So what happens is, if you are working in a multi-company environment or which has a lot of cost centers, then you can distribute the cost of the users, SAP users, to specific cost center. That's the main use of these cost centers. As you know, each SAP user has its own cost. So this cost needs to be distributed. For as an IT governance, that we need to find out, okay, this particular cost center, how much it is going to cost. SAP usage is getting this particular cost center, how many users is available. You can distribute the cost to different cost centers. So you can use the cost center, and you can also use accounting number. Let's say you have some kind of numbering system to identify this user, then you can have an accounting number. This is quite useful information. You can use as what is based on what your business demands. Next, let us come to this user type. We have dialog user, system user, communication data, that means communication user, reference user, and service user. So first one is dialog user. Dialog user is represented by technical name A. Let me see. Yeah, dialog user means technical name A. Means that when you go to your SAP system, for example, let's open a new session. Here if you go to SE16, the users in SAP system is saved in table USR02. Go to USR02. Take a user, for example the user which we have logged in, security underscore star. Let's put it like this. Let's see all the user like this. Okay, now we have trainer. Here the user type is A. So this is a dialog user. That's the reason user type is A. That's what I mean. Here, where is the user type? If I say select here, so you can see here. A means dialog user, B means system user, C means communication user, L reference user, S service user. Okay, that was the technical name for the user. Okay, first one is dialog user. So the dialog user is used to log in to the system using an user ID and password. Okay, the normal user, SAP user. When the dialogs user logs into the system, it obviously required an password to log into the system. And when first time dialog user log into the system, it will force you to change the password. And also the SAP will check for multiple logon. Let's say if you have disabled multiple logon, the SAP will not allow you to log in multiple times with the same user ID and password during the on a specific time. So it is very important. Dialog user, when they log on, it will ask you to forcefully ask you to change the password. It will also checks for multiple logon. Okay. The second one is system user. System user is identified as B. The system user, or we call this background user also. The system user or background user used for background processing. Let's say you wanted to schedule some job in background, then we can create a background job. We can create a background user or system user, assign some authorization for the system user, then you can run the program with this user. Meaning, for example, you have some programs which needs to be scheduled every day, for example. Then you can use this user to schedule this program. We will see in our later session how do we schedule a job using a background user. So the advantage in this background user, that using this background user we cannot log in, or using the system user we cannot log into the SAP system. So when you define a user as a system user, then you cannot use this specific user to log into SAP system. This is only for the system purpose. That means scheduling background jobs, and you can also use this user, the system user, to call internal RFC called. Internal RFC calls means RFC, we have seen it before, remote function call. Using this user you can call this system itself. You don't need to call an external system. Let's say for example this is a PRD system, you can call this system itself. Why do we need to call this system like this? There may be a special case. Let's say you wanted to, let's assume like this, you have a typical requirement from business that the user who is going to run, for example one user, this user who is going to run some program, who should not have lot of authorization, but you wanted to run only some specific program that will trigger something to this system. So in that case what we will do, we will create a system user which will have lot of authorization. Then the ABAPer will create a program which will use this system user and use an RFC remote function call to this system itself and execute some program. That is the usage. Maybe I could draw and show you. This is our system PRD. Then we have a user which is a dialog user. User as a dialog user. Then we have a system user. Which is B. So this user will use this user for RFC. Using this user it will execute some program here in our productive system. Then this user will get the answer. So only using this RFC. This RFC is called by the program which is customized or created. So this is an internal RFC. This user, this everything is sitting in the system PRD. So this is an internal RFC call. Okay, you do not call an external system, but you will call the internal system within the system. So the advantage here is this specific system user may have quite a lot of authorization. However, this you cannot log in to the system using this user, and secondly this user can use this specific system user only for the program which is defined by the process. Okay, that is called internal RFC. So the system user, we can use it for background job as well as for internal RFC calls. So when you create a system user, you put an initial password, this password will be never checked and it will never be asked to change this password. And the system user can log into the system multiple times. That means you have one system user, you execute many RFC calls, internal RFC calls, what we have seen. That means whenever you use an RFC call, it anyway is going to log into the system. Like this, you can have multiple RFC call coming to the system. So it allows multiple login to the system. Okay, that is system user. Then we have communication data or communication user. So this communication user is used to communicate to different system. Let's say we need to create a communication user in many scenarios. Let's assume that we have a different external system that you wanted to communicate to our system. Then we will create a communication user, give it to that specific system which we are creating the RFC to communicate to our system. Meaning, for example, this is our PRD system, production system, and this is the external system. So from here we want to connect to this PRD system using RFC. Using RFC. So in this case you need a user in this PRD, because this is the connecting system. You will create RFC connection from here and log into this PRD. Then we will create a user ID in this PRD as a communication user and configure it here. So we will put this user ID into this external system and the password into the external system. So it will log into our PRD system and do some process or extract some data. So that is communication user, and it also will be used for some workflow and for even for transport management, TMS, transport management, or central user administration. There's a lot of reasons that we need to have a communication user. So main reason is this remote function call. Using this communication user, you cannot log into the system using dialog mode, that you can only use it for RFC calls. Password for this communication user is in general is not changed. That means the initial password will not be changed in all the conditions. It's again depends on how you are going to use it. You are going to use this communication user in an interactive mode or a non-interactive mode. If you are going to use the communication user in the external system which you are connecting to the system, if it is going to be in interactive mode, then they have to change this user ID, this initial password. Otherwise it will not be changed. In most of the cases it will be non-interactive mode, then the user will not be, the password will not be changed. The next one is reference user. The reference user means you can create some users for your own reference, for user administration for purpose mainly. Let's say you have lot of parameters, which parameters or some roles which needs to be assigned to different users. Let's say you have a set of roles for sales persons and you have set of roles for storekeepers. something like this. You have different set of roles. So every time when you create users, then you need to keep assigning this role, you need to remember these roles, stuff like this. So instead you can create a reference user, and whenever you create a new user, then you can use this reference user. Meaning you can just simply copy this reference user and change whatever the address or some values, and we can create a user faster. That is the use of reference user. That means you cannot use this reference user to log in to any SAP system. It is just for your reference. Okay, the next one is service user. This service user is, again, it's a critical user type. This service user is used mainly for user something like SAP standard user, DDIC or SAP Star user. That will be service user. The service user is very critical, meaning this will not force you to change the initial password. The password will be changed by the user administrator, and it will allow you to log in multiple logins. So there is a lot of, and it will never ask you to change the password. Let's say you set a policy saying in the system that every 30 days you need to change the password, or every 90 days you need to change the password. The service user will never ask to change the password. So this user is used in a special condition only for support purpose, but in many restricted environment the service user will not be used at all. And it's very critical that you have only one password, that if somebody knows this password, then you will never change this password. It's very, very critical. So the service user is the user which is used only mainly for support function, and during this logon this system does not check for password, and it will not expire the password after the, even though you have set up some password expiry, default password expiry in the system, and multiple logon will be possible. So the service user is a very critical user. So we have to monitor or define the service users very carefully. In a typical scenario, the service user will not be used. Let's say you are going for an auditing. First thing the auditor will come and check is how many service users you have, how many reference users you have. Reference users even it's fine to have, but service user is very, very critical. They will always see this service users. It's a very critical one. So until unless your business really demands to have a service user, please do not create this service user. The reason is this. But in case of quality and development, you can have service users, so which will not, you don't need to change the passwords. Okay, let's move on to the next. This is SNC. If you have single sign-on, secure network communication, that is single sign-on, then you will have an SNC name provided by the service provider, SNC service provider, that you can specify it here. Next tab is default. In the default, the first one is startup menu. You can assign a startup menu. That means whenever the user logs in, this will be their menu in the left hand side of the logon. We have different menus. Let's say we can select here and see the menus. Like these are all the standard menus. Normally when you log into our SAP system, there will be standard menu which is displayed to you by default. That menu is yes 000. This is a standard menu. So if you want to change, that's the reason when you log in that your menu looks like this. Let's say create a session. This is S000. This is a standard menu. If you wanted to change, you can add additional, change the menu here. Another one is logon language. This again, depending on your system requirement, you can select a logon language. By default, there will be a language which is set as a default language in the system. For example, in our system this is English, so whenever if you do not specify any language, it will be logon as English. But if you want to have a different language, then we can specify it here. Then decimal notation, as you know, this decimal notation is used differently in different part of the world. Then we can define the decimal notation for each users, what kind of decimal notation they wanted to have. And same like that, date format, you can change the date format for each specific users. And time format also we can change for the specific users. Output device. Output device means your printer. So the printer will be generally configured by basis team, and they will have printer ID for each printer. Then we can define the printer ID here. That means you will have printers available for each users on each different locations. Then we can assign a default printer for each users. Then whenever they print, they will use the default printer. And here they have a quite interesting output immediately, delete after output. This again you need to confirm with the user as well as the basis team what needs to be assigned here. Output immediately means as soon as the user prints something to the printer, the sales document or something, then it will be printed immediately. And delete after output, as we seen in our previous session, there is something called spool work process. So that is the one who takes care of this. So whenever you print something, it will create a spool. Yeah, that is the printing. Imagine like a printing file. Yeah, just it will generate a file. It's called spool. It's not a file as such. Yeah, but just to understand, imagine as a file. Then it will be generating this spool, and you will print it. So that spool, what do you want to do with that spool? Whether you want to keep it or you want to delete it. You delete. If you select delete after output, as soon as it is printed, it will be deleted. In a best case scenario, in a bigger system, we will always delete the spool after output in order to reduce the database size of the system. The spool will be deleted. Otherwise there will be another complications which comes from basically the spool area, the memory allocated for this spool management may get filled. Okay, this again it will be confirmed by basis or the business requirement. Next one is personal time zone. This is very important, this personal time zone. You can see here system time zone as UTC -7, and the user time zone is CET, Central European Time. Let's assume that you have a system. Let's assume that your system is used around the world. Then your system is anyway located in one place. So the time which is used in the system will be different from the time where the user is trying to log on. Okay, our system is somewhere in US and the user is somewhere sitting in Australia. So the time which they get, time and date which they get in their system will be from US. How do we check the time? If you go system status, then we can get the system time. Yeah, this is the system time. So the system time will be different than the actual user's time. So if we wanted to have a user time of their own time zone, then we can change it here. So each user can have their own time zone. For example, even in US or Australia, we will have a different time zone time for within the country itself. Then you can define their personal time zone. The next one is for cat scripting. We can enable this one if you need to have indicator on cat scripting. That's again used for only in cats. That is not widely used. It's used only in cat scripting. Let's go back to our presentation. Missing user type, missing user default. Next one is parameters. This parameters, in parameter tab we can assign default parameter for the user. Meaning using this default parameter, it will change the behavior of the user. Let's say you have some transaction code, you want to default some of the value, like company codes. You can default some company code. For example, this is related to authorization. SU53 style is classic or tree. In SU53 means it's a transaction code to identify the issues in SAP. SU56 we already seen, and SU53 is another one transaction code to identify the issues in SAP, authorization issues. So in this SU53 output, how does the output should look like, whether it's a classic or tree? This we can define it in user parameters. Same like this, we can have quite a lot of user parameters which we can use it in the parameter tab. Let's check in our system. Here, let's say for example, if you wanted to default the company code, then you say BUK. BUK means company code, then you define one company code. This is your company code, then you defaulted this company code. So in the transactions which are related to company codes, when you go to that particular transaction, this will be your default company code. Like this we can define the parameters. So our next tab is roles. In this tab we can assign the roles as well as the valid from and valid to. Here also we have something called status, which will give you the status of the profile. Let's assign 2 roles and see. Let me search the role. Is it, yeah, a role like this, and we have another role like this. Okay, we wanted to assign this role. If the status says green, then the profile status is fine. Yeah, if it is not green, then there is something wrong with these profiles. So we need to check that. Okay, then we assign these roles. This is the validity, valid from and valid to. So once you assign a role to the user, the respective profile will be assigned in the profile tab. Okay, you can also control the validity of this user. So if you want this particular purchase order role, PO role should be valid only for 10 days, then you change the validity of this role. Say this should be till 21st. Okay, then we will change the validity of the role. After this date, this will not be valid. Yeah, right now if you go and see in the profile, both the profiles are assigned. Then, and the profile assignment is based on again the validity of the role. If the role is not a valid role, then the profile will not be assigned. The reason why, as I said before, the profile is the actual technical object which is assigned to the user, not the role. So if the role is not valid, the profile needs to be removed from the user. So let's try to do some testing. 05 till okay, I backdated this validity of the role. Now if you go and see, the profile is already gone. So the valid profile is only one, this RUQ role. So that is the only one which is valid. So whenever you change the validity of the role, based on the validity, the profile will be removed or assigned. The reason is there is no valid dates available in profile. This is the profile is the technical object assigned to the user. So based on this validity from the role, the profile needs to be removed or added in order to have the effective role assigned to the user. Okay, let's try to assign a composite role. So I have a composite role. I wanted to assign this composite role. Okay. Now if you see the type, if it is like this, then this means it's a composite role. If it is like this, only one row round, then it is a single role. And if you see one of this role is blue, that means the validity period, you cannot change this validity period. The reason is this single role is coming from this composite role. It is not a direct assignment. So if it has a different color, it's a blue color, means that it is not a direct assignment. So you cannot change this validity as you've seen. If you wanted to change this validity, let's say we change to 2015, then this will change the validity of this role. Yeah. So this particular composite role has two single roles which has this present validity. So the profiles are created, assigned based on the role which is valid. So right now what we have a composite role which has the same single role what we have assigned. So we have almost same thing assigned twice. So if you go to profile, you have only two profiles. So it will not assign multiple profile. That's what is the valid profile. It will assign only the valid profiles. Okay, let's go back to presentation. Next one is group. This group field is not the group what we have seen in our logon data. This group field is actually, this is not used. This is used only for special function. This is in R3, it is just simply disabled. It's not used. For example, in GRC we use this group functions, or if you create some custom program, then you can use this group function. Let's say user group. You can here also you can select the user group whichever you wanted to assign. This is a standard user group. If you want to put technical, you can assign to multiple user group, but this does not have any impact. This does not check any authorization checks or anything. This is simply disabled. The authorization check is based on the user group which is assigned in the logon data. Remember this, authorization check is based on the user group which is assigned in the logon data. The user group in user group tab does not have any impact at this moment. You can use this for your custom program or to identify user in a different group. You can add just to identification purpose only, or otherwise it does not have any impact. Then next, let's go to personalization. In this personalization tab, you can do quite number of personalization for the user. There's quite a lot of personalization objects which is available, and we can create our own personalization object. For example, this is some Z object which is created by somebody. It says some enter namespace. This is controlled gadgets creation rights. Actually, I don't know what is this personalization object is created for. So like this, we can create a personalized object for each individual requirement. For example, I can show you, this is a personalization object which generally we use in our security area. This is for license administration. So if you double click here, then you can define a variable name and value. Then this is used for license administration. You can put something and some values, then you can retrieve this data along with your licensing data of SAP. Just what we use for in a security side. And there are quite a lot that is used for, there's something this is used for GRC and for CRM, for utilities. You can customize the user based on the personalization data. Let's say if you wanted to have an additional information assigned to this specific user, then we can use this personalization data to add that kind of information. Say we have all these address fields, you want to have one more field assigned to this user, then you create a personalization object, then you can assign that particular specific personalization object to that user. Next one is license data. The license data, you can create the license type of a user. This again depends on your contract with SAP. So you need to understand the contract licensing agreement with SAP, then you create license data, then you can define this license data. You can enable and disable the license data whichever is not required. Then you can assign the specific license data which is available in your contract. This is quite important because this, based on this license data, that your charging mechanism for the SAP user may differ. You have to understand the SAP license agreement, what you have for your SAP implementation or for your customer, then you create license type based on the license agreement. So for example, right now I just selected SAP NetWeaver user, no specific versions, say OK. Now I save my user master. Let's go back to our presentation. Yeah. Now we created our user master. Now if you wanted to change anything in the user master, then you go to the change option, then you can do the specific changes, whatever you like to do. And we have a couple of other things. This is for display, only for display. You can go and display like this. And if you want to delete, you simply click delete. Next one is copy user. For example, as I said, if you create a reference user, you can use this to copy the reference user to the new user. For example, let's say I'll create SAP security reference UADM. Okay, U underscore AD, say, sorry, create SAP security user admin reference user. Then you admin at mydomain.com. This user is a reference user. So just put some password. Anyway, we cannot use this password just for saving, otherwise it will give you a error message. So I put a user group and I'll put a validity date and time. The cost center is cost center 1001. Let's assume this is my cost center, and the default value I will assign some output device. This is my output device, and parameters, I have couple of parameters. Be okay. Just for example, yeah, I selected some couple of parameters, and I always need to assign this role. This is not an actual scenario. Let's take only one. Okay, I always need to assign this role, for example, and license data I need to always select only basis user. Okay, something. Okay, this is my reference user. Yeah, I'll save this. Okay, now I got a request that I need to create a new user. Then I will say the new user is new 01. I simply need to copy from reference user. You can select whatever you wanted to copy from there. You can also select the address data. By default the address may not be same, that the name can be a different name. So by default this address is not selected. If you like to select, you can select it and say copy. Now everything is copied from the reference user. The parameters, roles, the licensing data, everything is copied. So you can simply change whatever test user, whatever you wanted to change it, and it's not reference user, it's a dialog user. Change and save. This is again reference user. You can copy from the actual user itself. It does not mean you need to have only reference. You can copy from only reference user. Let's assume this is an actual user. Now the user which we have created, for example security student, yeah, this is an actual dialog user. If you wanted to copy this, this is a service user. Forgot to change this. Okay, never mind. If you want to copy this, you can simply copy this user also. Okay, the next one is lock, unlock. So you can log the user. Once if you log this user, it will be locked from logging on. Yeah, So let me show you how does that works. Let's put an initial password. Change this user to dialog user. Okay, now I will log into the system with this user. SEC_student1. So since it's a dialog user, it will ask you to change the password. So when the first time login, it will give you the license agreement. Say okay. Now I have the user. So now right now I can log in with this user. Let me log off. Now I log this user. Select here and say log. Now the user is logged. If you go back again, log in to this user using this user. If you see, the user is locked. Please notify the person responsible. So the locking right now, if you go to this user and go to logon data, you can see the user is locked. So if you want to unlock this user, you simply click here. Right now you say locked by system manager, then you can unlock it here. The locked by system manager means that you as an administrator explicitly locked this user. There is another reason the user will get locked, because you can configure the system that if you type a wrong password for number of times, let's say for 3-4 times, based on your configuration, that the system will automatically lock the user that you don't know the password. For security reason we can do that. So how do we know what is the system lock available? This lock information is saved in USR02 table. So let's go to the table. If we go to SE16 USR02, let me put the user here. If you see, user lock is 64. That means this user is locked. If it is not locked, it will be 0. Say right now we will unlock this user. We'll go. How do we unlock this user? You go to the same lock and unlock. Right now this locked by system manager. This is unlocked. Click here. Now the user is unlocked. Now if you go to the table USR02 and see this user, it will be 0. When it is 0, then they can log in. So if you want to lock the user for some time, for temporary, you can still lock it using this mechanism. So what kind of locks are available? If you go to the USR02, this is user lock. If you click, then you can see the lock status. If it is 0, that means it's not locked. If it is 32, locked globally by system administrator. If it is 64, locked locally by system administrator. Globally means all the system. 64 is locked by system locally by system administrator, that means using this button. And 128 means locked due to incorrect logon. As I mentioned, that we can specify in our SAP system after number of tries of password, incorrect password, that you can lock the system. That means if a user is locked with the flag 125, that means okay, this user forgot the password, that you know. Or maybe somebody else is trying to log in with a different user ID and password. You can identify the locked user using this flag. This USR02 table, you may use it in your diagnostic process because it has quite a lot of informations. Instead of going in and finding out in the SAP user data, that you can directly go to this table and find out all the informations. Or you wanted to retrieve some information, you wanted to see how many users are available in particular user group, you can simply go and use this table to use it. Okay, this has quite number of information, like who is the created, when it was created, what was the initial password, how many times this password was changed, this kind of informations. And you can also see incorrect logons. So there's a count based on what we configured. If the counts fulfill the requirement what you have configured, then the user will get logged. Okay, and next one is password reset. You can simply click here and reset the password. You can generate the password, or you can key in the password of your own. And let's say if you don't want to use this SU01, there is one more transaction called SU01D. This is only for display. So if you go here, then you can use this only for display. So if in some cases if you don't want to give SU01 to somebody, but they want to display the users, then you can provide this transaction code to them. Next one I would like to show you about information. Next one I would like to show you about how to create a user group. You can create user group in different number of ways. You can go to SU01, go to environment, and you can see user group. You can go to maintain, and you can create a group here. You can create a group. The transaction code for this one is SUGR. Otherwise you can directly come to this screen using that transaction code SUGR. Okay, here we can create user groups. If you select, you can see these are all the user group presently available. Let's create a user group for ourselves. Create user group. Sorry, I need to specify the name. Security train 01. Create text SAP security training 01. Okay, we created a user group. We can also assign the user to this user group. Please remember, this user group assignment is on the user group tab, not on the logon data. So you can simply assign some user group, for example student for testing. So when you assign that, you go back to the user, go here and go to user, then the user group is assigned. So let's come back and change the logon data for this user. Now we have our own user group, security training 1. Select this. So this is our user group. So this is a way to create a user group. Now let's go to information. This is very important option, that what we changed, who changed in this users. This is many time we would like to see what was changed for this user. So we can check the change document all as well as the role assignment for this user. Let's check the change document. In this screen you can define the user and changed by. If let's say you wanted to see one specific user, then you can specify the change by or date, time, and from date and to date, and change history and table structures and technical view. And here we have lot of attributes which you can select the selection criteria. Okay, right now let's say I wanted to see who created this user. The user is user SC security underscore student 1 is created by whom. So execute this one, then it says created by security trainer 1, and what date it was created and what time it was created. Then let's see what about the password, what was changed in the password. Okay, now you can see here security trainer changed the password in this time, and the security trainer again changed the password from password 1 to password 2. Then the security student by its own they changed the password from password 2 to password 3. That was initially it was productive password. From the initial password they change it to productive password. Initial password is the password which we keyed in on the SU01. While logging in we changed to a productive password with an actual password of this user. This is what which we can see, and we can also see on what is the transaction code used for the particular change. This is logon kr kernel. KRNL means kernel, that means during the logon it was changed. Now let's see, we also changed the user group many times. So select user group, execute, then you can see initially it was trainer which was assigned to super, then the old value was super was changed to a new value security training 1 using the transaction code SU01. So if you wanted to see all the changes which was done for this user, you simply select this, it will give you all the details. The from date was changed, to date was changed, and quite a lot of changes what we have done. Or administrator or incorrect logon date only for locks and unlocks. We also did something here. It was locked and it was unlocked. So this is quite useful information. And the next tab is roles and profiles. Now we found out this always happens. We've seen some user presently it has lot of roles. We wanted to find out who assigned these roles. Then we can use this tab, select role, here you can see security trainer added this many roles, and same like that you can also see the profiles. Let's say roles and profiles. We got all the roles and the profiles which is associated with that. Okay, let's go back, and the next option is document for role assignment. This is the same thing again. This gives you only the role assignment detail. Here you can see what role was assigned. It was a new assignment or changed. like this, but the report is slightly different. That's it. You will get the full detail of the user which was changed, as well as the date and time in a different format, meaning little more detail of this change. Let's back to our presentation. Okay, the next topic is user mass maintenance. To do an user mass maintenance, you can use the transaction code SU10. This SU10 is a very useful transaction code if you want to do a mass maintenance of users. Using SU10, you can create mass maintenance of users. Also, you can maintain these users in one go. It will be quite useful when you are doing like a go live preparation, or kind of some urgent maintenance. You want to lock all the user at one go, or many user at one go, or you wanted to assign one specific role to many users, then you can do this SU10. Let's see in our system. Go to transaction code SU10. Let's create some user. Security 2. Okay, we will create all this user. Simply say create. Okay, here we need to remember something. In the address data, that we cannot maintain anything else except the company address, because the address data may be differ from one user to another user. You have to come back and change the personal data, that example name and other kind of data for each user, but you can do an assignment of a company. Let's assign to our SAP security training company. Okay, and the logon data is all dialog users. Our user group is, this is the user group. Validity is starting from this date and ending this date, and cost center, this is our cost center, or let's say different cost center. And the default, let's say I will change something else here and put some parameters, and I want to assign only one of this job role, so assign to all users, and this is an NetWeaver developer. Okay, so we selected all the possible options what we wanted to assign for this set of users, and once everything is keyed in, then you simply say save. And you also can see there is no password options. Yeah, you cannot do password for mass maintenance. You cannot generate password for many user and one go, because password should be different from one user to another. Now if it will give you a message, the change will be affected large number of users. Number of user changed is 8. Do you really want to save? I will say yes. Now here you can see the log. Thus it was changed in this is system and client. This is changed by this user, and if you open this, this is the users which has created. We have SAP security 02, 03, 04, and it will also give you the generated password for each user, because the password for the user should be a different password from the actual one. So you can simply copy this password and give it to the user. So it's very easy to create this user using SU10. So you can give this user ID and password to the specific users. So right now we have created this user, but the name of the user is still not clear. So what we need to do is, now you need to go to SU01 of each respective user, then they can go and change this last name, first name, or all other details. Otherwise the user can go to SU3, they can change their own user details. That is one more option, but in a best case scenario that you will go back to all this user and change this user. Let's go back again. Let's check this user. This is the role which we have assigned. Let's say for 5 users I wanted to assign an additional role. Now I will go to SU10. From 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Okay, this 4 user I want to assign an additional role. Then I will select here, say change, go to the role. Now we need to select a new role. Purchase requisition this date till this date. Okay, additional role. Or let's assign something else. This is a little confusing. Okay, I have a general role. This should be assigned to this user, for example. Then you need to select what are we going to do, add or remove. That means you can also remove the existing role in one go. So then we need to define whether it's an additional removal. Then you click change and save. When you save, then you got all the logs, then you can check the log, everything is green. This was additional role was assigned to this user. So let me go back and see this user. This user have the new role assigned. If I go to the another user, student 9, if I go, this is, that user is not assigned with this one. This is still in the old one. So if I go to role 2, let's assume I wanted to remove this role from some couple of users. Then I will go to SU10, select maybe 3 and 4. This 2 user I wanted to remove this role. Go to the role and say remove. Okay, so this is the one which I wanted to remove. Say okay. Do not mix add and remove function for the role and profile. Change. Oops. So now execute. It says do not mix add and remove function for the roles and profile. Oh, yep. It means here we selected remove, but in the profile it is still add. So here also we need to select remove and say save. So we are going, the affected user is 2 users, say okay, then this is deleted. Yeah, these 2 roles are deleted. So if I go to the student 3, then I can see these roles was deleted. One more thing, that don't forget to change this check this option. Let's say go to change. Let's say I wanted to change the user group of this one. I wanted to put it back to super user group again. Then you select this and don't forget to click this, the change. So we need to tell this SU10 what field we are changing. This is very important. Until unless you click this, it will not change. Say yes, and if you go to student 02, then the user group should have been changed already. The user group is changed to super. Let's check the information for this user. User, select, execute. So here we get all the details. The information which I am trying to show you here is the transaction code. So we use the transaction code SU10 to create the user and do couple of modification there. So you have the transaction code also here. Then from this screen you can find all the informations which has changed for the specific users. This is very useful in order to debug or fix any issues in a SAP system. Next, what we would like to discuss about SAP licensing. We have seen the standard SAP licensing which during our SU01 user creation. Let's see how does we maintain SAP user licensing. For this you need to go to the transaction USMM, click enter, and say USMM special user type. A special model user can only be used for classification. You want to activate this? Yes. Okay, this is the user measurement screen. So this have quite a lot of information. Let's see one by one. Last user measurement is run by this user, and the date, and this is the time. That was the second measurement type. Okay, we will come to this later. Again, what does this means? The system data, first one. First thing is when you have a SAP system, first of all you need to define this user measurement and all these types. First one is installation number. Installation number actually coming from your SAP installation, and this is the hardware key, and this is the system number. These are all again will be installation number, hardware key, and system number will be installed by basis administrator or basis consultant while installation of SAP system. This is given by SAP, so we need this is unique for each SAP system. Then we need to define the system type, whether this is a production or a test or training or development. So when we set assign to production, that means this system is a productive system. So when we select the productive system, then this will be counted for your user licensing fees. For all the development systems, select development, and training system, put it training. QA system, you can put it as test. Let's assume this is a productive system, then we will define this is a productive system. Then client, we need to define which clients that you wanted to implement for licensing. Yeah, let's say client 800 is for licensing. Then we need to select all this client, which are all the client is a productive client. That means whatever the client is a productive client should be included for user measurement. You don't need to include all other clients. So only the productive client should be used for user measurement. Then we have price list. Price list again based on your contract. Then you can select the price list the component price list or my.sam business suites, this will be there based on your contract with SAP. Then we come to user type. This is the user type which we have seen in our SU01. By default, SAP gives you quite a lot of user type. If let's say we do not use any of this user type, then we can disable this if you don't want, or if it is not applicable to you, and let's disable this. I don't have USS user in my system. I have test user. Maybe now here SAP provides you the special module user type. That means you can create your own user type. In some conditions, the customer will, SAP allows the customer to use their own user type. So they have quite number of user types, 71 to 79, which is assigned for customer to specify. So let's say if we SAP says you use the standard user type, SAP application developer, professional, and we had end user somewhere, the test user. Okay, we selected couple of this one, we unselect all these things. Let's assume whatever we selected was the actual one in our what we wanted to assign. Then the next one is address. Here we need to specify the address of your company, that you are sending this one coming from this address, and measurement recipient, which are all the from where we are sending. Then email address for receiving the recipient confirmation. So once you send it to SAP, they will send you the confirmation they have received this user measurement data. Let's say now we have changed this user type. I will save this one. Let's go to SU01. SU01. Let's take any one of our user. Licensing data. You can see only these users are presently available. So I'll change it to test. Sorry, SAP developer. Save. So we have only 3 license type presently enabled. Yeah, test, application developer, and application professional. So let's say we wanted to have your own user type. This is our, let's say this is end user, then enable this. The next one we will say support user, select this, then HR user, ESS user. So in your case, let's assume that you can have this kind of user types. Then we can select our own user type. Then test will be there always. Yeah, we may require this. Then in meaning to say you will have a different pricing for each of these users. Then if you maintain this one correctly, then you can you can have a better control over the licensing of each users. Now I will say save. Yep, we wanted to copy everywhere. Then we will go to SU01, go to the licensing data. Then you can change wherever you want. Let's take another user, say 3, end user 4, say end user. Like this we can change. Let's say we change this one, that let's say after changing this one you wanted to change all the users to a different user group. You can also do it in this USM screen. Let's say you go to user classification. So let's assume you have quite a large number of users which you wanted to change it to this new user license type which you have created. Then you can do it here. Let's say right now our students, all which we created, which is on license type 63. Now we wanted to change it to the new one which we have created. Select all, then select classification selection record, say select end user, say save. Want to save. This will be changed in one go, so you don't need to go to SU01 keep changing it. So you can select all this thing and do it in one go. Let's say you can sort it by, for example, there is quite a lot of things which is not assigned to any license type. Then you select which is blank, select whatever you want, then say classify, say it's an end user, select. This will be changed. Yeah, this is changed and gone back to the sorting list. Okay, this is USMM. Then if you run this system measurement, it will run the system measurement report and it will give the logs here. And once you run the system measurement, now after that you need to send this report to SAP. So once you click this, it will automatically send the report which is generated from this user measurement, and it will send to SAP for its verification. So that is the reason that you get this information. This was sent by this user on 2004 on this time. That was the second measurement which was sent to SAP. This is one method of sending to SAP. There is a lot of other methods. You can download it as a raw file and send it to SAP. That may be a better way to do it. Send, like here, system measurement, you say send to SAP. Instead you say download to raw file, then it will create the file, then it will send to SAP. Then you can also download for email. You can download it as an email attachment and send it. So like it's again, you have to check with your SAP counterpart and see how do they want to have this user measurement. So this user measurement is a very important topic. In order to keep your user measurement intact, that you need to define this user measurement in USMM, and you can do all the changes once you have configured the user measurement in USMM. Next, let me show you about how to create a RFC user. Security RFC underscore 01. Example, this is my RFC user. I will create this user. RFC user. Logon data, I will put a password and define this as an communication user. Okay, we assign to our user group some validity and assign some profile. So we have, and let's assign SAP-all. Okay, all authorization, and save. Now what happens is, you can, using this user ID and password, you can log in to this system from a different SAP server. For our testing purpose, what we will do is we will log into our one of our different client, for example. So from here I logged into the client 001. Normally what happens is, for RFC they will create using transaction code SM59. Go to SM59, we'll create an RFC. It's basically type 3 RFC to 800. Okay, SAP security trading RFC. Okay, go to logon data. Here we'll put the user ID and the password. Then you go to the technical detail. Here we need to specify which host we are going to log in. Our IP address is 192.168.1.52. okay, so this is the RFC, this is our user which we have created, and this is a password. If you say, then save this. Now you can test the connection. The connection is working fine. That means the user which we have created, this user is working fine. From here, from RFC also you can log into the remote system. So right now we are in the client 001. We change this to dialog user. When you change this to dialog user, now we say test connection is working. Now I say so we change the user to dialog user, then we put the user here. Then if you say now remote logon, it will log on to this client 800. The user ID, if you see, SAP security underscore RFC underscore 01. Okay, now I go back to 800 again. Go to the user, log on. I will change it to communication data, communication user. Now if I say again remote logon, it will not log on to the system because it's a communication user now. So if it is a dialog user, from here you can log into the system. Why? What is the use of this exercise which I am trying to show you? That you can test the user which you have created. In some cases, let's say you are not sure whether it is logging on properly, then you can change it to dialog user and debug some of the issues. You can check the issues. Or let's say you have an authorization problem with this remote user. How do we check it? Normally you can trace it. If otherwise, you can log into this one and simulate some of these cases, and you can also do a remote logon using this one. So if you want to log on, then you need to change it to a dialog user. That is the point. In communication user, you cannot log on, but you can test it and see whether this is working fine or not. Okay, let's go back to our system. Now let's create a background user or system user. Okay, let's like this. Create SAP security system user. Log on, let's assign to our one. To make it fast, I will simply assign the sample for time being. Okay, sorry, we did not. Okay, this is a system user. Okay, so can we log in with this user? We should not be able to log in with this user. Let's try once. Client 800, and this is the user. We'll put the password. Log on with a dialog user. That means this is a system user. So if, let's say, if we change this to a dialog user, then you will be able to log in. So how do we use this system user? How do we schedule a background job? To schedule the background job, the transaction code is SM36. If you go to SM36, then you will create a job like this. SAP security background job, check. And you have something called job class. You have different type of job class. A means high priority, B means medium, C low priority. This is based on the priority to allocate this systems. Then you go to steps. Here, this is the place where we will use this background job. Then you will assign a program. Okay, some program. If you have variant, does not have any variant. Then you will select any of the program which you want to schedule. Then you will select a variant. We have test variant, and check and save. So right now, if you see, this program is going to run under this user. Okay, whenever this program is going to run, it's going to use this user's authorization. So let's go back and say, I'll put some condition, date, some date, time, the 17th. Okay, we schedule this on, this means we schedule this one on 17th. So I wanted to monitor this job. Now we schedule this job SM37 to monitor the job. Go to SM37. This is my job name to see for all users. Let's cover 17th. Okay, this is a job which we have created. If you select and say go to steps, and if you see, this job is scheduled by, job is created by this user. So when the job is going to run, it will not use this user authorization, SAP security trainer authorization. It will use the authorization of this user which is assigned to this step. It will use the security BG SEC underscore BG underscore user 01. So that will be the user. If, let's assume, if this user has authorization to run this program, it will run. Okay, meaning the schedule user, in our typical scenario, the schedule user does not have authorization to run this transaction, then that is fine. But this user have authorization to schedule, but this user have authorization to run this program. So what is the use of this one? When you implement an segregation of duty, for example, you want to run a program, some program like this in background for financial closing, okay, but that needs to be scheduled by a, it will be done by a functional consultant, financial closing, or functional consultant, or end user. Let's assume is going to be run by some FI consultant, but FI consultant does not have authorization to schedule job, and FI consultant, that user does not have authorization to close some do this financial closing. So we can use a background job who can do a financial closing. The FI consultant will create this variant what we have seen during our scheduling, and will give it to a basis person who will schedule this job under the user which we have, background job user which we have created, which have authorization for year-end closing, the financial closing. So that is the use of this background jobs. Like this, you can create any number of background user and schedule background job under this user. So this is background job. Next, what we are going to see is the startup menu. Let's take this user. Sorry. Let's take our user. Right now we do not, this user does not have any startup menu. So when I log in using this user, what we will see, go to my 800 client, user. Okay, I see the screen, user screen as well as the SAP screen. When I log in, as soon as I log in, I see in the user screen. Let's say I wanted to see the SAP screen, then this is a default R3 screen. Now I will log in again. Go to 800, student 1. So by default it comes to the SAP logon menu. Okay, so if I do not have this one, it will go to the user logon menu. Let's say, now let's change this one to a different menu. Let's see what menu we can use. C000, or let's put this one, COPA. Save. Go to client 800. Now if you see, it came to a different menu. This is a COPA menu which we have assigned. It's related to COPA report. Yeah, like this we can change the SAP menu. So right now we are not using an SAP menu. This is the user menu. When they go to SAP menu, they will get a different menu. So it's again depends on your requirement. If you like to change this SAP menu, then you can change it for users, because it makes sense that if you wanted to have a specific menu only assigned to this user, then it's fine. Then the user does not need to browse through all the SAP menu. You can have the menu which he is based on his job functionality. Let us look into the time zones. How do we make use of time zones? Let's say for this user, what we will do, we will assign a different time zone, which is better. Okay, for Australia, Queensland. Okay, so this user which we have logged in right now, SAP Security Trainer, what is this status? Okay, this system time is 12 o'clock, 12:00:09, but the time zone is CET. This particular user, SC trainer, is on CET. That's the reason it has 7 o'clock. So let's log in with our test user. Student. When you log in with this user, let's see what is the time. The system time is 12 and the actual time zone is Australia, Queensland, then it is 15 hours. Yeah? So like this we can set different time zone for each users. Okay, in this status screen you can also find lot of other informations, like this is the client we have logged in, this is the user, this is a logon language, and we have seen the time and the SAP data. This means we are at the moment in the transaction code SU01. This is the program for that. You can also get it from here and you can also get it from here. And what is the version of this SAP system? SAP ECC 6. If you click here, it will give you the components, all the components and its version. It's a release level. This is NetWeaver 7.02 and this is the EHP level, enhancement package. So this kind of information you can get it here. This is installation number, this is license up to what date, and whether it's Unicode system or not, what is the operating system, and as well as what is the database used in this server. So these kind of all this information you can get it from this screen. This is an useful information because sometime you may need to check what kind of SAP version you are working on, or maybe what is the transaction code you are presently running and what is the related program for this transaction code. You can get it from here. Let's go back to our PPT. With this we are coming to the end of the session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session.